The HD8XX does some things really well and has one huge problem. Let's talk about it. So here I have the 8XX and here I have the HD800S. This is my pair of HD800S. This is the pair that I own. I've been using them for quite some time and I do love them for some reasons, and there's a couple drawbacks that I really wish would be tweaked, and I really had hoped that the HD8XX had maybe remedied those, but they didn't quite. Instead, we see something a little bit different. Let's start by talking about the build and then go from there. So build-wise, these headphones are nearly identical with the exception of the writing on top and the coloration of this little ring on the side. Oh, the sun is setting. The lighting is going to change a lot during this video. If you're not familiar with the build of the HD800, I'm going to run through that real quick. That'll pretty much cover everything you need to know about both as far as build and comfort is concerned, with the exception of the aesthetic and acoustic changes between the two. The HD800S is pretty comfortable. It has very large ear cups. It has a soft pad on top that I do wish was a little bit softer. That's probably my only complaint with the comfort of this entire headphone. And while I don't think this will bother most people, I would say that I'm a little bit probably more sensitive to things like that because I have a ton of headphones and I don't know, little changes between pairs really bug me. So I do wish they had a little bit more padding on the very top of this, especially for extended listening sessions. But aside from that, they do have some of the most comfortable pads and ear cups that you're going to find across the industry. The build is great. They are long lasting. It is easy to scratch them, and this metal mesh around the side is also very easy to damage. Not normally to like penetrate or break through it, but you will notice scratches and dents on it very, very easily. It articulates to a very wide variety of head sizes, so you don't really need to worry about fit. And the connections on the bottom, I honestly do think the connections are kind of a pain. They're a little bit hard to pull in and out, but it is what it is. At least they're secure, and you can replace the cable if you need to. All in all, the HD800S is a very comfortable headphone that is very, very, very well built, and it certainly deserves the tag on top that says made in Germany. The 8XX in that regard is no different. It is 100% deserving of the made in Germany title on the top of the headphone. I believe that these headphones are extremely well built, not just for their price, but for headphones in general. I think they set a good standard that only a few headphones on the market really exceed in terms of build quality and attention to detail. The same can't be said for certain faculties of sound, and these do excel in many ways, but they do have a couple of major drawbacks. So the HD800S in general, which I do want to do a full review on this eventually, so I don't want to give away everything from it, but for the most part, the HD800S is a fantastic sounding headphone. It has some of the widest soundstage, if not the widest soundstage that you'll find in consumer headphones. Yes, I know there's a couple weird oddities like free field headphones that would probably in certain circumstances have wider soundstage, but this is not a free field headphone, this is an over-ear headphone. And this also isn't some like vintage 1980s piece of tech that's really obscure. This is something you can go out and buy today very easily. In terms of timbre, the 800S is very good. The 8XX not quite as much, and you'll see why in just a moment. And as far as the 800S's tuning is concerned, it's actually really good with two little exceptions. There is a dip at 2 kHz, and there's a little bit of a peaky area in the realm of 6 kHz. But the bass is great, mid-range is great, the treble is mostly great with the exception of that 2K dip and that 6K realm peak. So when I found out Drop was working with Sennheiser on the 8XX, I thought, well, surely they're going to bring up that 2 kHz, kind of get rid of that dip, and they must try and reduce those peaks, right? Right? That is not what they did. Instead, they made that dip, that 2K dip, 11 decibels deep. Why would you do that?
What you doing? Hey brother, this one Hey brother, this one I want to tahan also cannot tahan. Just one song. I listened one song already, I already want to talk.
This was in an attempt to bring up the bass, which they did bring up the mid-range and the bass, and they did manage to bring down the 6K peak just a little bit. The problem is, that 2K dip, that 11 decibel deep 2K dip is so deep, right next to and leading up into that peak, that the peak sounds twice as big on the 8XX. The sibilance is significantly more noticeable, the treble sounds less smooth, vocals sound hollow like they're in a hall or in a cave. And this is a comparison I've used before for some other headphones that have a dip in a similar region, but this really does take it to another level. And it's unfortunate, the timbre the clarity, the balance, all feels like it's been completely ruined by this complete imbalance in the tuning of the headphone. You can repair it with very, very heavy equalization. There are pads like the Dakoni Finstrated pads that will bring this a little bit closer in tuning to that of the HD800S, but don't quite fix its major flaws, and you do lose more bass response in the process. I'm gonna be honest, I'm pretty upset by this. I really like a lot of things Sennheiser makes. I like a lot of things Drop makes. I think that the Drop HD6XX, which I'll link that in the video description, is one of the best values you can get in all of headphones. It is an incredible deal. It's a headphone that scales extremely far. It's a headphone that I use almost every day. I'm amazed that the people that made all these other headphones I love from Drop were involved in this. I know some of you guys are probably gonna be watching this Drop. I know it's probably too late to change this thing. I know several other reviewers have said the same things as me. There are great ways to fix the peak on the HD800S without making the changes that were made to this headphone, which were originally thought just a lining of tape on the inside of the cup, but it ends up there is also an additional bit of damping added to the rear side of the driver, which you can actually see inside these holes right here. This means that unfortunately these modifications are not easy to reverse, and you cannot turn the 8XX into an HD800S without risking some serious damage to the headphone. It's very unfortunate. But hey, if you guys aren't completely committed to this design yet, give me a shout, because I can tell you how to fix the 6K without killing the 2K. It's not ideal. It doesn't really lend to the headphone's ability to separate instruments quite as well. The soundstage is unaffected, luckily, by the changes in tuning, so this still does have absolutely fantastic soundstage. It still does scale well on higher amplifiers as well, but the tuning is so broken. Unless you're willing to put some major EQ into it, I don't really see the point. If you're not going to use EQ, I would advise spending the extra money to get the HD800S. If you are willing to use very heavy equalization, then sure. But it's not the headphone for me. It's not the headphone for me because I'm not a big EQ guy. And I do like some analog EQs. The Shitlokius I think is a really cool analog EQ, but the knobs on that don't go far enough to fix this headphone. That's rough. I do use the Lokius to slightly tune the HD800S. I find that that's a fantastic combination because you only have to use minute adjustments. I'm doing a build video also to talk about what my system is like with the HD800S, because as you guys are, I'm sure, aware, I have a variety of headphone systems, and one of them is a setup I prefer with this headphone, a DAC, an amp, and some other equipment. So we'll talk about that sometime soon. 8XX, should you buy it? That's up to you. I think the 6XX is still a solid buy. I think the PC38X is still a solid buy. At its price point, if you're willing to put in EQ, you can get incredible value out of it. I already think that the HD800S is a really good value at its price, even with it being as expensive as it is, and this is cheaper for the same driver technology. So it all comes down to what you're willing to do. If you want to buy the HD8XX, I will have the 8XX linked in the video description. I will also have the HD800S linked in the video description. They're both pretty efficient headphones. I could not find an amplifier that was able to remedy the HD8XX's problems, including some pretty drastic changes with tubes, but it is what it is. It's muddy, it's unpleasant, the mid-range is extremely harsh and shouty. It lends to the sound of a cheaper Grado. Like when I think of this sort of mid-range texture, I think of something like the SR60E or the SR80E, but with more muddy sound to it. That is not the pedigree of Sennheiser, and it is certainly not what I would have expected from this headphone. I'm sure there are people out there that will like this headphone. If you're watching this review and you love this headphone, that's okay. Love it. You can keep loving it. I'm not telling you not to love it. Because if you can get this thing and enjoy it with no changes, more power to you. I personally can't. And it's a real shame because I feel like the HD800S is a headphone with such good dynamic driver technology that it rivals that of many planars in its own price range. That is just not common. And then we have this, with all that performance, all that detail masked by a major fault. That is what it is. I think that's going to wrap this video up. I need to pass this unit on to the next reviewer. So guys, that is all I have for you today. If you like this video, leave a like down below, a comment, let me know what you think about the 8XX and everything I've told you today. If you want to get active in the community, you can at forum.hifiguides.com. And as always, don't forget to stick around and subscribe for more videos like this in the future. Till the next one, guys. Peace.